Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bearhug Club, a pro wrestling podcast of positivity. As always, I am your host, Greg, and I'm joined by my boo, Garrod.
Hey, baby.
Hey, baby. And I'm joined by an old boo to me, but a new boo to you, Jace Dodd.
How's it going, life partner?
How's it going, life partner? How you been?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Good, good. I feel like we should explain to people that Jace is joining the crew now, so we are a three-man commentary team going forward. So tell people about yourself, Jace.
Yeah, lifelong wrestling fan, northeast of England, and excited to get into the podcasting world.
Absolutely. So, yeah, moving forward, three of us now, so bear with us. We might get a bit over the top of one another, but I think it should be a lot of good fun. Just to start with, since we last recorded, we've got a few new social media channels. You can find us on Instagram now at Bearhug Club Pod. Garrod, you're still in control of the Twitter, which is just Bearhug Club, is that right?
Yes, Bearhug Club.
Fantastic. Just check that out because I've been posting like loads of random stuff on there. Mainly plugging the pod, but I've started a new thing called Isn't Wrestling Weird, where this week I wrote about a wrestling chimp called Sambo. Did any of you guys see it?
I did, I saw that.
It's a really interesting story if you want to go check that out, but we also plug that on Facebook as well, so keep an eye on the channels. Going from some housekeeping from last week, obviously me and Garrod got into a bit of discussion about the referees' red shoes, so we decided this week we were going to continue that by talking about our favourite referees. Garrod, do you want to start? I think you said we should each pick out three, so who did you kind of pick out as being some of your favourite referees?
Obviously we went over Red Shoes last week. Red Shoes is my favourite referee. I think he's the best referee in the game right now. Just solely on his ability to elevate a match without being a focal point. My second pick is Aubrey Edwards, who is just the best referee in AEW. I would argue the second best referee in the world, who's doing a very similar thing. Like if you just look at when she has a Jericho match that she's doing. She's laying down the law as if she is a professional MMA style referee without really taking away from the story, and allows them to do their heel work or to do some face work, and it just works really well. But my third one is referee Tim White, and solely for the Tim White storyline. And if you guys don't recall this or don't aren't too familiar.
I know where you're going with this, Garrod.
Yeah, it's where Tim White tried to kill himself about 5,000 times. They would do vignettes every single week, and it would just be him. One of them was just him drinking in a bar, and it'd always be like I can't remember the name of the backstage guy, but he'd always go back and be like, "Hey, referee Tim White, how are you doing?" And then he'd just like down a shot. I remember there was one he went off camera and you just heard a gunshot, and then he'd appear next week just like in a wheelchair or like with a head wound or something. And it's of its time, definitely, but
yeah, it's the kind of thing you couldn't get away with today, and it sounds bad in principle, and yeah, you shouldn't really joke about mental suicide, but it did go very Wile E. Coyote as it went on. Like, there's a bit where he just pulls out a giant fan and just throws himself into it. I think he drinks like an anthrax virus. It does go in just incredibly over the top with like how it's done, and then the fact that he just kind of reappears the following week with some kind of ridiculous excuse of how he survived. It was funny for the time, but there's no way you could get away with that kind of thing in today's like WWE.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
No. Jace, so did you manage to pick out a few referees?
I did. Mine are very tame in comparison, but my top one, going old school, bit controversial, Earl Hebner.
Oof. That's controversial,
Hebner, just for the sheer balls of him working for WWF at the time and selling bootleg merchandise out the back of his car with his brother. Just purely for the balls of that, he's my favourite referee.
No, I mean, I've got Earl as well, but who else did you have on your list?
I also had Mike Chioda,
Mm-hmm.
purely because
Solid.
he's been the referee in quite a lot of my favourite matches. So he's just always been like a focal referee. And then Nick Patrick.
All right. Yep. No, that's another good one.
And again, it's for one reason. It was, I can't remember the year, but it was Taboo Tuesday. And it was Gene Snitsky and Chris Masters against Matt Hardy and Rey Mysterio. And Teddy Long sent Nick Patrick, because it was a Raw pay-per-view. Teddy Long sent Nick Patrick, and he just kept stopping Mike Chioda, making that 3 count, just so to try and give SmackDown the edge. I think that's just a brand loyalty.
No, that's good. I mean, that was the thing with Nick Patrick. He was always very heavily involved with storylines, especially when you look at stuff in WCW, and then like a little bit when he came over to WWE. He was always kind of the heel referee, if you will, because I'm pretty sure he was on the side of like the NWO, and then when they did the invasion angle, obviously he was with WCW, so he's always been involved in some quite fun and interesting storylines. Going off mine, it's essentially kind of the mix between you two. So I put Aubrey Edwards as an honourable mention because she's still obviously quite new to it, but she is probably like one of the best referees going at the moment. She is always brilliant in the matches that she does, especially squaring up to Jericho, like you said. But yeah, my picks went Earl Hebner because, I mean, he's just fascinating again for the fact that, you know, he sold the bootleg merch, which is how he got fired from the WWE, but then he was also kind of involved in stuff like the Montreal Screw Job. But then even then, he was just a good referee because he was the kind of referee that didn't take any shit from the people. Like, if people squared up for him, he wasn't afraid to push back and get in their faces. So he was kind of a badass in that regard. And then I've got Mike Chioda as well, just purely for the fact the guy was around for pretty much when I started watching wrestling, and he's still around now, even though he's... Is he kind of officially part of AEW now, or is he just kind of occasionally popping up?
I think he's officially part of AEW, but I think I assume it's more of a backstage role, maybe even like training up other referees and just helping backstage. But he does do the occasional like big match and stuff.
He was at the last pay-per-view, I remember. And then I've got Red Shoes as well, but I mean, we kind of went into a lot of detail about him last week, so if you haven't already, go back and check that episode, because we did kind of gush over him a lot then. Brilliant. So we'll kind of go straight into the highlight reel. So we're kind of mixing it up now. So instead of just going over loads of different random news, I've just said we could each just pick one thing we want to bring up from like whatever may have happened in the last week. Because it's your first episode, Jace, do you want to go first?
My highlight this week, I had a really hard time narrowing it down. I got it down to 2. But I think I'm going to have to go with the Wee-Nominal One appearing in Impact.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, Carl Anderson said, "Oh, we've got a surprise. AJ Styles music hits," and then out comes Hornswoggle. And I think that's just a fantastic trolling, not just of the fans, a bit of a rib on AJ, but also like a bit of a flipping the V's to Vince, just saying what you're gonna do. And the fact that they called him the Wee-Nominal One.
That was
came out,
pretty
did
good.
the whole AJ style with the hood, throwing up the hand signals, just perfect. And Hornswoggle went on to win his match, which is always a bonus.
So did he like? Because I remember I've seen the photos, so I haven't actually watched the clip. But was he fighting like another wrestler of his height?
No, it was a regular sized. I can't remember the name of the guy.
Just a jobber.
No, I think it was someone from a tag team that is feuding with the Good Brothers.
Right. Okay. So I don't keep up with Impact that much. I know they just won the belts from the North. So was it possibly one of them?
Just trying to find it now.
No bother. No, I did see it. It did look really funny. I'm kind of surprised they could get away with that, given how AJ is under contract. But I mean, unless they're not actually referring it by name and it's purely just the look and the music that they own, I guess they probably could get away with that.
Well, I think because Impact still own AJ's old theme music, which is what they used, and AJ himself owns the name to AJ Styles. WWE doesn't own that, so they can still get away with saying it.
Okay.
And it's sort of like, even though, say, Chris Jericho is with AEW, because Chris Jericho has been a former WWE champion, they could still get away with saying Chris Jericho because it's tied in.
Yeah. No, I get it. I kind of thought they probably could, but you never know these kind of things. I mean, WWE's always looking for a lawsuit they can jump onto. What did you think about it, Garrod?
I actually haven't seen it. I've only seen images of it, but I mean, the club especially being part of that spot it's absolutely hilarious. It also mirrors AJ with his new henchman as well, standing behind him.
Yeah, I totally forgot about his henchman until I watched Survivor Series, and even then he was just kind of stood there like a spare prick the whole match. But we'll probably cover that when we get to it. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jace.
It was Ethan Page. Hornswoggle had his match with.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, all ego Ethan Page.
Yeah.
Is that the right guy? Am I thinking the right guy?
I think so,
Former tag team champion, is it part of the North?
So it must be the North then, yeah. Did he hit a forearm?
Hornswoggle, I'm not sure how the match ended, but it was over in 2.5 minutes.
Oh. Wow. Must have been an absolute Mac classic. Brilliant. No, thanks for that, Jace. Garrod, what do you have for this week?
So, last week I talked about the Best of the Super Juniors quite a bit, and we are back in the swing of the Best of the Super Juniors, the 27 Best of the Super Junior 27. It was originally meant to go on in May, due to everything going on. They postponed it. We have people like Bushi, El Desperado, Hiromi Takahashi, Robbie Eagles, current champion, Taiji Ishimori, all of them in it, and that's running until I think it's December 10th or 11th. I think it's 11th is the final. So I'm very pumped about that. They've just put on a few good matches. One of the best ones I would recommend watching, I'd always recommend watching his matches, is Hiromi Takahashi. I think he was against, I'm not too familiar with this guy, but Dookie or Doki maybe. I don't want to pronounce the name as Dookie in case it's not actually Dookie. But also,
Dookie.
From now on it is Dookie. Also announced, because I mean, like we were talking about how Japan really values its junior division, or its cruiserweight division. They're doing the New Japan Super J-Cup, which is more of a Western version, with people like ACH, Blake Christian, Chris Bay, Clark Connors, El Phantasmo, Leo Rush, TJP, Ray Horus, and that is going live on the 12th of December, I believe. So they're doing, yeah. I think that's part of their New Japan Strong part, which is their sort of like Western branch.
Ah, fantastic.
The thing about New Japan, it doesn't matter who they've got. It's going to be great matches.
Yeah. Hard
hitting. They could literally have two sticks in the ring and it'd be a great match.
I'd watch it.
Garrod would.
Red Shoes is such a good referee that he could referee 2 broomsticks to a 5-star match.
Yeah.
What was was it an indie show where it was 2 invisible wrestlers?
It was Invisible Man versus Invisible Stan, I think.
Yeah, and essentially all the work's just on the referee to try and sell this invisible
power. Because the thing is, the audience sold it as well, like the entire match. I think I remember that match pretty well. They did like they started in the ring, did like the back and forths, did like a test of strength type thing, and the whole thing is just the ref like really selling what's going on. And I think that the backstory is that you can only see them with special invisible seeing glasses, which the referee put on. And then there was a point where they followed them to the outside, and he was just like following them through the crowd, and they went up to a balcony, and he's like no, as they like do a superplex off of the balcony onto like some crew on the bottom. And I think it may have been like 4 members of the crew fell down. Like half of the audience fell down as well and sold for the Invisible Men.
It's amazing. I mean, they do like a table spot in it as well, don't they? They kind of really go out to try and like sell the fact that there are just two invisible blokes squaring off in the ring.
Yeah, I think that is the same one that they do, the invisible table spot, where it's just set up in the corner and it just like cracks as someone goes through it.
Ah, fantastic. Going back to the Super Juniors then, is there any kind of favourite to win it at the moment?
I'm actually not too sure on who the favorite would be. Takahashi against Ishimori is one that's happened a few times. There was a match they had in like, God, it was one of the. It might have been Sumo Hall or something, where the stairs there, they're not steep, but they're like quite long, and they're like concrete stairs, and one of them did like a running head scissors, and they just went down like an entire flight of stairs. They nearly killed each other. I would like to see that again, but really, it's the kind of thing where any single one of these people could go up. You got Sho from Sho and Yo, Roppongi 3K. He could step up as well. Robbie Eagles, maybe he was brought in and tagged with Ospreay in Chaos, so I wouldn't even be surprised if he ends up joining Ospreay as his sort of junior project as well, turn heel.
Oh, fantastic. No, I'll be looking forward to it. I mean, I only just got my subscription to New Japan back, so I might actually finally get around to checking that out if it's been ongoing, so try and play a bit of catch up and see what I think about it, but excellent. Yeah, anything else you want to add to the Super Juniors there?
No, I'll keep updated, and I'll let you know the standings as we go. Maybe we'll watch the final together.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we could get like a big watch along with us doing it. That'd be quite fun.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. So yeah, for my edition of the highlight reel this week, you may have seen the article because I put it live today over on our friends at the Pick and Mix podcast website. I watched You Cannot Kill David Arquette, the new documentary that just came out. Had you guys heard anything about this before it was released?
I hadn't, no.
I'd seen the trailer. I'd seen a few sort of interviews about it, but I haven't been able to actually watch the film yet.
Yeah, it's only just come out, so I had a bit of trouble tracking it down, but I did manage to see it a day or two ago, and it is really good. So if you're not totally familiar with it, essentially, back in the last 9 days of WCW, they brought in David Arquette, who was fairly on the rise in Hollywood as like the next big actor, and he was starring in their backed film Ready to Rumble, which was WCW was kind of helping finance it. It had their talent in it, which is a dumb comedy film about wrestling. So they thought, why don't we get the big star of it to come on TV? We'll put him in a storyline, and it'll be great. It'll draw up some publicity. But then they kind of made the very dumb and very weird decision of putting the WCW title on Arquette. Something I should point out he was never on board with, because he's a huge wrestling fan, and he understood that him just being there was rubbing up people the wrong way. But to have him win the belt, he knew it was going to cause him a lot of hassle. But they did it anyway, and the angle was completely destroyed by fans, and it did nothing to help the film, which was just a complete and total flop. And as a result of that, Arquette just his career kind of took a dive because of that, because, I mean, Hollywood doesn't look too kindly on the wrestling business anyway. But the fact he was in a bad film and he won the title, it just did him no favours. So the last couple of years since then, he's just been kind of struggling with his acting. Like, he's only appeared in bit parts and small films. And he's constantly plagued with the fact that he was never been let to forget that he kind of tarnished this wrestling company and this belt with a lineage. So the whole documentary is about him, because over the last couple of years he's been trying to prove to himself that he belongs in the wrestling business, and the documentary kind of charts that. It's a really interesting watch, but it is a bit strange at times. So in my review, I kind of said the first half feels a bit weird because a lot of it feels very Spinal Tap. So like there's a bit where he goes to like this Legends of Wrestling event, and when he shows up there, the Legends aren't happy to see him because he brought his own camera crew, and they nearly basically kick his head in and they smash up his camera. It just feels a bit too, is this a bit too staged? And then it was just daft stuff like there's like an indie wrestler he meets who, no joke, looks like he lives out the back of this seedy van. He's this really weedy dude, and he's just sat there being interviewed, pumping his weedy arms on a dumbbell. It just feels ridiculously scripted at parts. But going into it, though, eventually it does get pretty good. So he does, like, to his credit, he gets in tremendous shape. I mean, he's about 46 when this documentary starts shooting. By the end of it, he is pretty ripped, and he's pulling off some impressive moves. Like, he's doing hurricanranas, he's doing springboard moves. So he really puts the effort in. One particular part I loved is he goes to Mexico, and trains with the luchadors. Apparently, this is a thing in Mexico. So, you know, like, there's a big thing where if people are in traffic, people come up and clean your windows, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this, there is actually people who will dress up as luchadors, and when cars stop at the traffic lights, they will just wrestle in front of the cars for spare change.
I want to go to Mexico even more now.
So he literally goes out, like, his first one's rubbish because he just doesn't know what to do. But then on his other attempt, he does actually, like, run up a ladder and jump off onto the guys and gets a fair bit of change. So he's kind of proven his worth. And it goes... I won't cover everything now because I think people should go watch it because it is good. It's a good documentary because wrestling fans will find something to appreciate and non-fans will. I think it gives people a good insight into wrestling and what goes on. But it does cover the death match he had with Nick Gage. Did you guys remember seeing about that like about a year or two ago?
Yeah, I think I remember that. So
Yeah.
he got hit in the head with a breeze block.
No, so that was a different thing. This was, they were at like an indie show. I think it was like in a bar, basically. And Arquette takes some fair licks in it, like the light tubes come out because Nick Gage is just a maniac. It's what he does. But a spot went wrong, and in his neck, Arquette's neck gets perforated with the freaking light tube. So, right, he was basically close to dying. If it'd been any closer to a certain part, it would have probably just made him bleed out. And it's quite a harrowing moment because you see it happen, and then you see him on the outside of the ring, and you can tell he's torn with going to the back because he's been badly injured, or staying and finishing the match, like sticking with that old school etiquette, of, you know, if you've been injured, you finish the match and then you go home. So it is really fascinating to see.
Apologies, I disconnected there for a second.
Oh, I was wondering where you'd gone, man. Did you hear any of that?
I didn't, but let's just edit this out and pretend like I did. Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Greg. About still David Arquette.
Yeah. Tell you what, shall I go back from the Mexican part?
No, yeah, I think if you're in a flow, just continue on.
I mean, I was nearly wrapped up there, but essentially what we're talking about there was just the death match with Nick Gage. Did you see that, Garrod, where he had a couple of years ago?
Well, yeah, I actually saw the actual match. I didn't see it in the film, obviously, but
Yeah.
I do remember the match, him getting injured.
Yeah. So he gets badly hurt. He gets his neck perforated with a light tube, and then it's just really harrowing to watch because you see him in the match just kind of duck out the ring when it happens, like he knows he's in trouble. And you can tell by the way it's shot that he's very torn with going to the back just to get attended to because he knows he's been hurt, and finishing the match because obviously that old school mentality. And you can kind of tell he can see he's going to be screwed whichever option he chooses because he does end up choosing to finish the match. And obviously that gains him the respect of the wrestling crowd, but then afterwards he gets completely like shit over by like the media because it made the rounds when that happened, and he didn't come across as very good to a lot of the media types who don't understand this world. So it's really interesting to watch it as it went down. Brilliant. But yeah, I'd highly recommend checking it out. I think it has literally just released on most streaming platforms, so I think you can get it on YouTube, it's on Amazon. You can probably just rent it for a couple of quid. It's definitely worth a watch if you've got nothing to kind of view over the coming weeks, so definitely check it out.
Definitely will.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if those Mexican luchadors wrestling in the traffic.
Honestly, it's ridiculous. Like, I props to them because it's more out of the box thinking than just like a squeegee and some window cleaner. They'll just wait for the lights to turn red, just go out in front of the cars and just have a little bit of a scrap. But they'll do like proper like hurricanranas onto the concrete and stuff like that. It was quite impressive. I was like, I wish that kind of thing would just happen in the UK, but it just feels very Mexican, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Well, if you can't get a booking, you've got to do it somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
I get the feeling health and safety isn't really a thing in Mexico.
No.
I think health and safety gone mad. You can't wrestle in traffic.
If it happened in the UK, you'd have to have a high-vis jacket on, you'd have to have a hard hat, you'd have to get the cones out every time. It would just not be possible.
Have you got a wrestling and traffic license?
No, officer.
That's what I thought.
That's 12 chops.
Good stuff. I don't think there's much else to cover. Although the one thing we should bring up, which I did fix in the pod last week, is that right when me and Garrod were recording it, we were wondering where the hell War Games was, and it has been announced now. So on the 6th of December, I believe it is. So far, I think it is. As I said last week, it's going to be McCarthy's stable against the Undisputed Era, and we're getting Team Candice LeRae versus Team Shotzi Blackheart. So, any thoughts on that, gents?
I believe there's been some other women announced for the match.
Oh, okay. Can you remember who?
I remember Dakota Kai will be on Team Candice and Tony Storm on Team Shotzi. And I think there's others, but I can't remember who.
Okay. Oh, well, at least the card's filling up a bit there.
Yeah,
Garrod,
assumptions would it would be, Rhea Ripley, Raquel would be on the heels team, and I don't know. I assume Io has her own match. Maybe she'd be put in there as well.
Yeah. I mean, like, the thing is with the NXT Women's Division, it's really good, but it's not the most stacked. So if most of them are going to be in that sort of War Games match, I don't know who would be kind of left for Io to defend against, really. But I guess it's just something we'll just have to wait and see. I think they're going to be building to it quickly because it's literally was announced last week, and they've got it's next Sunday, so they haven't got a lot of time to build a lot of stuff to it.
Well, they're on a thing where they're doing takeovers on Sundays now instead of doing them on a Saturday before a pay-per-view, because I don't know, maybe they're trying to fill the network and fill the dates, I suppose, but it could just be a case of wanting to make NXT a bigger thing. Don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's rubbish that they're not doing Saturdays anymore, because that meant usually I was guaranteed to be able to watch it, but I'll have to wait till probably Monday to do the catch-up on that. Brilliant. So
I believe it was, I think it's Ember Moon, also on Team Shotzi.
Ah, okay.
Solid.
Which Ember Moon, great. So underrated. Well,
if she does
anywhere.
If she does an eclipse from the top of the cage, I will probably, like, if they go on first and she does an eclipse from the top of the cage, I won't need to watch the rest of the show.
Yeah, it would be night over.
Just be it. Unless that's how they close the show.
That's how they should.
Yeah,
they should. No, it should be good. I'm looking forward to it. Cracking. So we'll move over to matches you need to see. So if you've not been listening to the pod before, this is essentially just a segment we do where each week we take it in turns to pick out matches that we just think you should go watch, no matter what the reason. It could be that it's just like a bloody good match, or could be that it's so bad that you just have to see how bad it is. Could just be really funny, whatever the reason. So given it's his debut episode, again, we handed it over to Jace this week. So do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so my pick was the Bastard Pack against Cara Noir from Riptide.
Of course you Northerners whap out a pack match straight away. Of course you do.
It's War Geordie Pack, man.
It's War Geordie Pack. I chose this match because it was the first match I saw with Pack post WWE. First match I saw with Cara Noir. Since then, I know me and Greg have both seen him in person at North. But I like this match just because it shows how good Pac is at the character work, where he is constantly like antagonising the crowd and just basically living up to his name of being a bastard.
I think to that as well, it's not just great character work for Parker, you're right, this was sort of one of his bigger, more notable appearances since leaving WWE, but it shows how well Cara Noir is at just storytelling in the ring. So, funnily enough, before we kind of picked this match, he did an interview with Wrestle Talk where he talked about how no matter what the match is, he always likes to try and craft some kind of story around it. And I think for this one, it's just the fact he just wants a handshake from Pac. That's all he really wants at the end of the day. And that's what the whole match is effectively built around. And it was just amazing just to watch them go from Cara just basically being like, no, come on, shake my hand. And then they just completely brutalize one another.
And I think with it as well, just a British wrestling crowd adds so much to the match. like a relatively small British crowd, you can hear every chant, and I haven't really seen that from any promotions in America where they get a crowd that small gets that loud.
Yeah.
And that passionate about the guys in the ring.
I know we're very biased as British people, but you know we're the best at chants and we're the best at crowds just because we're fucking rowdy. It does mean we can often be the worst because we might just find something fucking hilarious and not stop. But but if you're in the ring giving your all, we will be paying attention.
No, absolutely. I mean, because it's the thing with British crowds, when you look at all of the sports, pretty much like, you know, football, rugby, whatever, the crowd, that's where the sort of crowd mentality comes from. And I think it's just not something present in American crowds. Like, they're just a bit too pleasant when it comes to it, if you know what I mean. Like, if you watch them like an American football game, you won't see them doing the typical kind of like chants you'd find in English crowds. It's like when they did NXT TakeOver in London, and one of the reasons that is just such a brilliant show is just because the crowd are absolutely amazing throughout the whole thing. Like, you won't find any other chance in an NXT show like you will on that particular TakeOver.
Yeah, one of my favourite chants in all of wrestling came from that show, which was "Top Knot Wanker."
It's a popular one. I mean, like, going off like small indie crowds, I mean, I've been to shows with both of you, but I think Jace will agree when we saw... It's a match we'll probably bring onto this segment because it is absolutely phenomenal when it was Ilya Dragunov and Jordan Devlin when Progress were in Newcastle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, that was like the closest
fantastic match.
Yeah, fantastic match, but it was the crowd especially that helped. That was like the closest thing I've seen to like a football-style chant and atmosphere to a match. It was like the crowd... like the match itself was perfect the way it was, but if it wasn't for that crowd as well, it just tipped it up into the next level.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna gush about Progress crowds like many times during this podcast, yes. Having especially been part of them as well. But like I think just to go back to like American versus UK crowds, or just like, you know, globally different places. It's a weird... I don't know if it's, you know, necessarily the right format for us to have that discussion, but you could really go in depth on like how different they are in just like how structured they are, because it's weird to say, but you know, crowds do have structures. You go there, and because of where you are and what you're used to like the social setting of it. In an American football game, they're used to having the cheerleaders tell them to cheer. That's why they're there, to hype up the crowd. In UK stuff, we don't really have that, I suppose. Maybe Jim Smallman will come out at the start of Progress and give you a little, or tell you your shirt looks fucking dumb or something, and you know, everyone will laugh at you, and that's how you get hyped up. But it's not the same as like some scantily clad cheerleaders going, "Give me a Y, give me an E, give me an S." Yes.
I mean, I think it is just the case that, you know, Americans can just be a bit too polite, you know, when it comes to these kind of things. Whereas, you know, give a British guy a beer and put him in a crowd, he will generally say whatever the fuck he wants. Mm-hmm. And as a result, that'll just kind of happen all the way around. And that's why if you go to something like Progress or to North or Riptide or wherever, you're guaranteed to hear at least some familiar chants. Like, there's some that will just always be brought up, but then you'll at least hear one or two things that are just completely unique and it'll probably never be chanted again. So there's always just like... It's just one of those things where British crowds just have that kind of edge over the American ones, I think. Which is why it's weird. It's kind of weird watching something like NXT UK, because that doesn't seem to happen on that show. Like, the kind of crowd, like the kind of chance you get some, but I'm guessing they've probably been making them tame it back a bit, because there's probably some tracks that just couldn't air on the network.
Yeah, I think they do. You know, at the beginning of a lot of those shows, they do have people come out and say, you know, tone it down a little bit. And I suppose a British crowd isn't really the right fit for televised wrestling sometimes.
Yeah, true.
See, I think another part of it is, like, quite a lot of Brits know what it's like to go to a football match and it just be a really bad match. So instead of watching the game, you'll just make your own entertainment, which is where a lot of the chants come from. Like I've heard chants about a player who plays for Newcastle United, John Joe Shelby, looking like Lord Voldemort. Jordan Pickford, the England goalkeeper, can't reach the crossbar, he's only got little arms. And I think it's just one of them things, and we are so good at taking the piss out of people compared to Americans, because we have sarcasm is a lot more prevalent here compared to America.
No, I agree. I think that's something the British kind of champion is, not only just classic British sarcasm, but British wit as well. We can just be generally quite... British people can be quite funny without even thinking about it. You know what I mean? It just kind of comes a bit naturally from having been born and raised in the UK. So I think that's just kind of why it translates into chanting. But yeah, going back to the match, I remember I was kind of made aware of this because not only did it kind of did make the rounds online a bit, because if you did want to go watch this, by the way, it is free on the Riptide YouTube channel, so you don't have to pay for anything. You can just go watch it straight after this. But it was mentioned, I think it was in the final issue of Fighting Spirit magazine, because they were closing print and moving over to Wrestle Talk. They did the 50 greatest matches, and this one came just at number 50, and it was the most recent one on the list. So it just kind of go to show how much of a strong contender it is, because it is just a fantastic match from start to finish. Anything to add on top of that, guys?
Yeah, I think just...
after you.
No, go. No, go.
I insist.
Okie doke. I think it's just another example of sometimes smaller crowds being better than the bigger crowds. Because I think if that match was in in an arena, I don't think it would have been as popular, because it would have been too... I'm trying to think of the word. Too much going on with the crowd for the focus to be on the wrestling. But with that smaller crowd, it just worked.
Yeah, the product itself, just talking about how how it's filmed and the production behind it. I haven't seen much Riptide. Obviously, when you talk about wrestling this way, you're usually talking about how it would be live, I suppose, and things like that. But the product is really good. I looked at the credits on the YouTube, and it was edited and filmed by Wild Stag Studios. And I actually contacted them earlier today, just asking them, anything you can tell me about it. It was, very good. We liked it. And a man named Dave replied to me. He said, it's mainly about the lighting to create nice images. And if you watch it, it's very dimly lit on the outside, kind of moody, I suppose. Unlike your which a lot of indie, especially British stuff is. We quite like our dingy pubs, and we quite like our dingy wrestling. But you've got this bright light in the center, kind of smoky atmosphere. There's always a lot of smoke just hanging above as well. He just says we use a mixture of our Sony Alpha cameras and handheld gimbal stabilizers to get smooth shots. Very nice one to just weigh in there. But it is a really good production. Whether you prefer the kind of classic 2 camera either side and single hard cam, that's your preference. I think I prefer this Riptide style where you can get in really close, you can have these intimate shots and really tell the story a little bit more.
No, I agree. That was one thing I brought up was, the production-wise and camera work in this is fantastic. So, well done for getting in touch, but I didn't realise. I thought, because the thing is with Progress do fairly well at shooting a show, but I'll be the first to admit the camera work isn't always the most stellar. It does still have that kind of indie rawness to it, if that makes sense. Whereas this does feel slightly more advanced for an indie show. Some of the camera angles they're getting and the camera work that they've done with it, it looks incredibly professional, but given that they must use this professional team, that does make a lot more sense.
Yeah, looking at their portfolio, they're very good at what they do.
Did you find it weird at all watching a match without commentary? Because that's one thing that seems to be missing from Riptide.
You know what? I didn't even think about it because I was so invested in the way it was produced and these two in the ring. I may be misremembering because I don't remember him too well from when I did a few training sessions there, but I'm pretty sure Cara Noir trained at the London School of Lucha Libre. He was out of makeup, but I'm pretty sure it's the same guy who occasionally taught me a few things as well. But having known him training, which, like I say, I believe it's him because he's so in character and great as you know, the Black Swan, as Cara Noir, that it's so difficult to really like differentiate the two.
Yeah, no. A question I want to pose to you then. So like, this was kind of the match, as kind of Jace mentioned, that kind of really sort of put Cara on the map in terms of like the independent scene, and he's kind of shot up since then. Like he won the Progress title at the start of this year before everything had to go into lockdown. I'm pretty sure he was the Attack champion as well. He won the WXW 16 Carat of Gold tournament, so he's been on a banner year. If he does eventually make a step up, where do you think he would go in terms of a major promotion? Like, where do you think might use him the best?
Well, those are two different questions. Where he'd go and who'd use him the best are two annoyingly different questions. I think he'd probably maybe go to NXT UK. I remember he had a match with Pete Dunne. I think that was the one we watched at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, he did.
And Pete Dunne did a promo afterwards because that was around the time where a lot of people were worried about NXT UK and them signing up all the talent, and there just being there was a worry that anyone on NXT UK wouldn't be able to work anywhere else. And I remember he did a promo where it said, you know, British wrestling is not in trouble when we've got people like this in the pipeline. And like, very true. But I think he'd most likely go to NXT UK. I think NXT UK could do wonders with him. But really, I think his character could fit in most places. I think they could make it work in NXT UK. I think they could make it work in New Japan. I don't know. I hope it picks up soon because he's the current Progress champion, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's still the Progress champion because he literally won the belt maybe a month or two before they had to go into lockdown.
Yeah. Fingers crossed we open back up because I think he could really be a massively dominant force in the UK scene, and even should he go overseas, should he go anywhere else, I think the character can really, really work.
Yeah, no, I agree. Same to you, Jace. What do you think?
Yeah, I think NXT UK would be a fantastic fit for him. Like we've seen him have multiple matches, and he just seems to have good chemistry with so many people. But just keep him away from Vince.
I think that is going to be a situation. If he did go with WWE, Vince would look at this and just not have a clue what to do with, I think.
No,
but
just keep him away from Vince.
One thing that does excite me is if he did make it to the main roster and he did, do well, imagine the WrestleMania entrance he could have.
All right, that's it. Now I want WrestleMania, Finn Balor, Cara Noir.
See that's simple. You just make NXT part of the main roster during WrestleMania season, and there you go.
Yeah, and then just keep him back on NXT because he'll do well.
You have Black Swan versus Demon for the NXT Championship.
See, that's just got money written all over it right there. I'm just picturing, because obviously if people haven't seen his entrance before, you should go out and check it because he's probably got one of the more unique entrances in wrestling. I'm just imagining he'll just have like a huge swan wings that will just like extend. Do you know like when Lordi played Eurovision?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Just like big ass wings will just extend, like automated wings will just extend out, and all the glitter.
All the glitter.
All the glitter. Anything else you want to touch on that one, lads?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it.
I think we're good. Well, thank you very much for that one, Jace. It was a top pick, and as mentioned, if you did want to go watch it, it's free on the Riptide YouTube, so enjoy, people. So lads, it was Survivor Series this Sunday, just gone. I've got my thoughts on it, but just to kind of gauge your opinion, what did you each think of it?
I think
I didn't enjoy it that much, but there was some absolutely cracking matches on it.
yeah, same for me. A couple of good matches, a couple of endings I wasn't expecting, but overall, it was just how Survivor Series has been for the past couple of years.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I mean, the best way I summed it up is probably saying to you guys, the match quality was good. It was just a very lackluster show. And this is kind of the issue when you've just got this brand war thing that has to happen now every October and November. They don't really build much around it. It's just the situation now where it's like, oh, it's that time of year again where the brands are going to fight for reasons. It's just the thing that happens. I mean, there was a few things that stood out in the show that I thought was quite interesting. For one thing, Keith Lee's finally got a new entrance music. Did you hear that out?
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. And just speaking of Keith Lee, I think the fact that he had the final elimination in the match to win it for Team Raw, and then not Survivor Series, but the next night going over and getting through going over Bobby Lashley and getting through to that triple threat next week. I think they put in faith in him. I think he might be the one I want to watch for the next couple of months.
I see him going to a championship program, but I don't see him winning it yet.
Really?
Hopefully. Yeah, I think he's going to be probably maybe even the next challenger, but I think that's going to be it. He's just the next challenger, and he'll most likely not go over.
Yeah, I don't see him winning it straight away. If he is the one going forward next, I don't see him winning it then. But could you think maybe it's something that might happen as soon as Mania?
I don't think so. I think that they will most likely do a mid-card belt for him. Mm-hmm. I think I see him with a US belt by Mania.
Oh, I can picture that.
I just
taken.
Yeah.
No,
because there was a lot of work. There's a lot of ways they could go about it with Bobby Lashley being the US champ and them trying to recruit Keith Lee into the Hurt business and work that story. He joined them just to get in and a way to get that title.
Yeah, I see them really trying to put him over by having beat all four at the same time type deal. Maybe not, 1-on-4.
I was going to say, don't bury the Hurt business.
Right. To be honest, what I see is him losing a championship match and then most likely going into a tag team. Possibly with Riddle, which, they've teamed together on the indies and in Progress and places like that, which has always been fun.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind that, but as I guess we'll talk about when we get to the tag match, which I think was the best match on the card by far, it's just not given as high of a profile as it should.
No, I mean, well, that's just the issue with WWE's tag division in and of itself. There's just not much to it, and then it is just a case. I mean, you and me saw at the same Alexandra Palace show, we saw Cara and Dunn, we saw Riddle and Lee take on Mustache Mountain. So they are great at tag team wrestling, but ultimately they are just solo wrestlers, and it's just the big thing. WWE will put the belts on a team like that. They just don't seem to back the actual tag teams in the division. It's always some kind of short-lived makeshift team that they keep putting the belts on.
Yeah, I mean the problem is that there's the lack of depth in the tag team division. There's about 4 teams on each brand currently.
Mm-hmm. And then you've got AEW, which is kind of overflowing with tag teams at the moment.
Yeah, they just signed the team that the Bucks faced. Was it Top Flight?
Top Flight, yeah. Speaking of Riddle, just a side thing, because Riddle got a I think the thing with Team Raw, they obviously had the best showing in the match. Mainly because I think they had more stars that they could build off there because you had Riddle and Lee. So Riddle got a good showing, but just as a little side thing, so I don't know if we'll bring it up. I think I sent it to you guys. Did you watch his backstage promo with MVP on Raw?
Yeah, yogurt flavored pizza.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, pizza flavored yogurt.
Pizza flavored yogurt. I don't know why it was. It's just typical Riddle promo, but I just thought it was the funniest and cutest thing when he just went, "Aw."
Like, Riddle is one of them characters, I think, where you either love him or you hate him. And I was on the team hate. I don't know what it was, I just didn't like him. Mm-hmm. Great in the ring, just didn't like the character. But now, like, I wouldn't be without him.
No, exactly. I mean,
I just want to give him a hug.
We did talk about the promo a bit in the chat, and Garrod, you made a good point that the kind of person that Riddle is lost on a lot of fans. Like, they think he's been written that way, but that is actually who he is in real life.
Yeah, I mean, kicked out of UFC after a 4-fight win streak for smoking weed. The bro character is him. Just from what I've seen, like any kind of interview with him, that's him. You know, it's not really, this isn't him being forced. I wouldn't say it's him being forced to do this. From what I've seen, I don't know the man personally, but I think it fits. And weirdly, I was afraid of it, but I think his goofy kind of character could really work on the main roster. I think it's the kind of thing that if Vince watches it a bit, I think he might really like. You know how he adores R-Truth's dumb stuff. I think he could really get behind some Riddle type stuff. I wouldn't even mind an R-Truth Riddle program.
No, actually, I think that'd be quite fun. I think with Riddle's character, it's one of those things where it's going to go one or two ways. There's no kind of middle ground. He's either going to do incredibly well on the main roster, or he's just going to kind of get lost because people don't really understand what he's about. I think, though, he is quite high in Vince's stock because he was when he first got there, I think he was kind of impressing Vince with, like, a couple of things. So hopefully we see some good stuff out of him. Going back to the Team Raw match, I think the only notable thing I wanted to mention is how Seth Rollins is now written off TV by one bro kick.
Yeah.
It was a bro kick that he couldn't defend, I guess.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, they've always been big on Sheamus.
Yeah. I just hope it leads into something when he comes back, because obviously the big thing is he tweeted out. Is it essentially he said it's for the greater good or something?
Yeah, I don't know. If it is for something, I don't know if it's actually going to be anything when he gets back, because they'll probably forget. Maybe even they won't have mentioned Aaliyah and Murphy. So I don't know.
Well, I think the reason they've wrote him off is because Becky Lynch is just about due.
Yeah, so
definitely.
We know why it's happening. It's just obviously when he comes back, we hope it leads to something.
Yeah, the thing is with Seth, like, he's so good in the ring as a character, but it's inconsistent as well. It's like sort of like they'll go so far with it being amazing, and then just turn a corner and go back the way they came.
Yeah, I was really getting behind this new character of his, and I was hoping that maybe he'd come up with some kind of disciple stable properly, because he had the Authors of Pain, which has one of them been released or both of them been released? I honestly don't even know anymore.
I think they've both been released.
Yeah, and then he had Murphy, obviously, and he had Austin Theory as well, who went back to NXT after, like, I don't even know what happened to there,
It was a mix of stuff. It seemed like they weren't fully sure what they wanted to do TV-wise, and then he had to be off TV for a while because he was somewhat brought up in the speaking out movement, but I think it wasn't like as heavy allegations as a lot of people had been brought up with, so he was off for a while, and then they brought him back in, but just on NXT. No, I think I agree, though. Like, it would have been good to see more of a stable out of that, because that was definitely some of the best character work he's done in a while, and, I mean, hopefully he'll pick that up when he comes back, or knowing him, because he is sort of one of those wrestlers who can kind of reinvent himself, so maybe we'll see something different, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. Should we just move on to the tag match? I think I'll let you two go with this because I do agree it was a good match, but my issue is I'm not a huge fan of the Street Profits, so I wasn't totally invested in it. So why don't you guys take the lead on that one?
After you.
After you. All right, yeah, I'll go. So we start the match with the New Day coming out. Big E back together with the New Day because they've got a Gears of War crossover. They come out in absolutely fucking awesome Gears armor. Well, I guess it's not even cosplay because it is them.
Yeah.
Cool entrance. The Lancer version of the trombone.
Yeah.
That was great. I always hate the announcers having to do the like, yes, I've played this game, and then they read off just like Gears 5 on Xbox Series X Ultimate Game Pass, play it now, and kind of shit. He then went to Joe, who I'm almost positive has definitely played Gears and knows it very well.
Yeah.
Then Profits did a little promo, and if you're not behind the Street Profits, you have to be behind Montez Ford. I think he is genuinely exceptional on the mic, has such good presence. He was great in that backstage promo. Angelo Dawkins isn't bad either. I think they work as a team. But Montez Ford is the kind of one I do see eventually going for a singles title if they ever do go down that road. They come out and then they do another ad for I think it was Montez's shoes were like a special Adidas Ric Flair shoe.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
But yeah, Montez Ford even had like a little nod to the Undertaker with his hat as well. Then they have a great tag match. They had such a good match.
No, like I said, the match is good. I'll sort of explain a bit why I'm not thinking through the Street Profits in a sec. But Jace, what did you think of it?
I think Montez Ford is going places. I actually saw it online. I can't remember where I saw it, but someone said Montez Ford is the black Enzo Amore who can wrestle. So, because again with the team it works because you've got the mouthpiece and the wrestling. Not that Montez Ford can't wrestle, but he's got that sort of banter about him. Just give him a mic and he'll just go.
Yeah, I charisma wise, I definitely see the Enzo Amore. Any other way wise, probably not. I doubt he'd show up at like an MSG show or what was it, a Survivor Series last year? He showed up.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. I doubt I'd see Montez Ford in the crowd there.
No.
But I completely agree. He is one of those talkers. I want to see him in the ring against just having a chat with like Kevin Owens or God, what good talkers are there in WWE right now?
Kevin Owens.
Yeah. Hell, to be honest,
Paul Heyman.
Heyman.
Bray Wyatt, if you want to go for like weird stuff.
Yeah, he could do if he ever does a singles program, I'd like to see him against Sami. I think if because Montez did, I don't know, I don't remember if he served or anything, but if when they get a crowd back, they could do Montez Ford as like the big up the American angle and have Sami Zayn, because Sami Zayn's whole thing now is like fuck America, which is a classic heel thing to do, but
yeah.
I think Montez Ford against Sami, it'd be great on the mic, and then they'd be amazing in the ring. Montez Ford has one of my favourite frog splashes in all of wrestling.
He has got a beautiful frog splash.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I think I like all the talent involved, because obviously it's the kind of great team. You've obviously got, again, Ford can wrestle, but he's obviously more the charisma, and then you've got Dawkins, who's basically the muscle of the group. I think that, like, again, Ford's a great talker. I love everything he does in the ring. Like, his selling's amazing. Like, I can't remember what happened at a point during the match, but there's a bit where the camera cuts to him and he's just making one of his eyes go sideways. Just daft little stuff like that I do find enjoyable. But I don't know what it is. I just whenever I hear about the Street Profits being in a match, I just don't get excited. I think something just hasn't clicked yet. Like I've said this about a lot of teams and wrestlers in the past, where I'm not the biggest fan. It's probably the same with you with Riddle, Jace. I think something just has to kind of click before I can finally get excited about them. Moving on then. So I think it was Sami Zayn versus Bobby Lashley next, and I mean, is there much you really want to say? This was kind of the sleeper match, really.
Yeah. Although I did enjoy Sami trying to provoke the rest of the Hurt Business into hitting him so he could get the disqualification. That was enjoyable for me. Yeah,
it was good. It was good heel work from Sami, who's like just been doing incredible work in that department anyway. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I just this was kind of the match I was kind of zoned out a bit on. Anything you thought interesting about it, Garrod?
I just bloody love Sami. I'm really digging the Hurt Business as a group as well. I hope they get, because factions is like one of my favorite things in wrestling. I think it's just a great way to just give everyone screen time and to keep stories going. Just having people ringside is such a great thing, especially for like if someone's injured and they go to their corner and they get some like reassurance, or if someone's like, oh, I don't know about this, and they go and like MVP whispers in his ear, he's just like, hey dude, do this or whatever. It's just it just adds an extra layer to it, so I'm really getting behind that. I hope they do a lot more with it. Match was fine, I suppose.
I mean, it was okay. It was just because it's brand warfare, champs versus champs. That's all it kind of really amounted to. So it was okay. Then it was Sasha versus Asuka not for the titles, but obviously they were both the champs going in. I thought this was a really good match.
I really enjoyed this match.
Really enjoyed it. I think Sasha's just been on both Sasha and Asuka have been on probably like a very good hot streak with matches this year. Especially when, I mean, I'm not going to say they were like bumped down the card or anything, but when Asuka kind of made it to the main roster, she didn't have that same kind of push behind her for like quite a while that she did on NXT. And this past year, she's kind of really sort of become more of a champion figure. And same with Sasha. I mean, since that Hell in a Cell match with Bayley, she's just been absolutely terrific.
Yeah, Sasha is probably going to be the top woman in WWE. She's only 28, still got years of her career left, and she's already this good. I don't know, she was wrestling for a long time before she was even in WWE. I think she's been in the business 9 years.
She was young. She was very young when she trained.
It's like for someone that young to have that long of a career and still have so much of her career to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's if she doesn't wreck herself, because she does take some horrible looking bumps at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there have been a few scary bumps, and I worry that occasionally it might put other people in a little bit of danger. Obviously the Paige thing happened, but that seemed like a complete freak accident.
But said that was an accident.
Yeah. I'm well behind Sasha. Who knows? After the Mandalorian, that might be her just enacting now.
Was it?
But she wasn't bad, and she didn't really have many speaking lines, but she was fine.
Was it this episode just gone that she was in?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I still need to catch up, so I'll let you know what I think of that probably next week. Again, it was just another solid women's match. Again, this is kind of like one of the things WWE has been doing better than a lot of other companies. Like we talked on the first episode ages ago about how AEW has the talent there, but for whatever reason, their women's division just isn't just taken off like it should. Whereas with WWE, it's kind of night and day. Like their women's division's got one hell of a spotlight, and like a lot of the best matches that are occurring at the moment are from that division. And chief among them is people like Sasha, Asuka, Bayley. So again, this was always going to probably be a fantastic match to see. I think there was like enough kept back that we could see them in like a bigger program further down the line, like have more of a bigger sort of main event type match. Again, I think this one is what it is because it was brand warfare. Like there wasn't any kind of build to it to kind of get a bit of excitement about it.
Yeah. Again, like Asuka, what can you say about Asuka that hasn't already been said 1,000 times? Legit, one of the best, not just women but one of the best in the world in the ring. And I love the fact that since she turned heel when she was still teaming with Kairi Sane, she's just gone so weird. But it's so it's not weird in like a Bray Wyatt. It's weird in like just what was it? She dumped Sasha out the ring and then she was just there like doing some weird interpretive dance, and it's like, what are you doing, woman? But it's so entertaining.
I mean, that's the thing with her character at the moment, is that obviously in NXT she was much more serious, I guess. Like, she had that quirkiness about her, but she was all just about just kicking ass in the ring. Then in the last year or two, she has just... I think if any other wrestler did that, especially one that was probably as American, you would just think it was the dumbest shit ever. But because Asuka's doing it, it's just amazing, and it's just bizarre and funny, but she pulls it off somehow, which is really weird.
Yeah, she's just got the charisma to do it, and she backs it up in the ring. I mean, she does just a running hip attack, where, you know, which would have just been a pure comedy thing in like any other wrestler. Other than, like, who else has that? Naomi has that. She doesn't do it as well, but, like, she still gets the reaction from it.
Yeah, I agree. No, it was a solid match. Moving on then, obviously it was the Women's Survivor Series match. A lot of people seem to dislike this mainly because of the finish, but I generally thought the finish was pretty good. It was like interesting to kind of see Lana after being put through a table for like what feels like an eternity on every episode of Raw. It was kind of I think you could kind of see it coming that she was going to get some kind of win out of this.
It depends where they go. I mean, I honestly see her just going back through tables, unfortunately. Her wrestling's improved a lot more now, and I hope, you know, it only is given time to go even further and have more matches and everything. Obviously there's reports and rumors that it's her going through tables is because of Miro and everything like that. You just want it not to be the case, and everything, and her being the sole survivor is no matter how you look at it, and obviously, like, it wasn't exactly the most dominant win. It wasn't like Shayna Baszler killing everyone in Elimination Chamber domination type thing, but I don't know. It's still a sole survivor. It's still like she won Survivor Series, and she'll always, even if it goes full heel, she'll be able to have that and use that. If she uses it well, it's going to really work for her.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see what you're saying, but then the fact that they did give her that spot and that kind of win maybe kind of shows that that it's not just a case of her being buried because of her husband. Because, I mean, the big takeaway from it that a lot of people were upset about was it made what are arguably the bigger stars they're trying to build not look good in comparison, because obviously Bianca Belair gets counted out at the end. So I think a lot of people got rubbed up the wrong way about that, and then I think it was something to do with Bayley's elimination wasn't supposed to go the way it did as well. So a lot of people's complaints were that win sort of tarnished a lot of the up-and-coming women that they're trying to, like, they want to see become more top stars over Lana.
I didn't mind the ending purely because I think it would be interesting to see how, if they started building Lana is getting all these victories, she just keeps winning and winning and winning, but every time she's not getting the pinfall, she's not getting the submission, she's winning everything, but not a screwy finish, but just by accident. I think that would be an interesting way to go, and just have it happen for up until the Rumble, and then have it look like she's going to accidentally win the Rumble, which would really piss off the fans. And then you have number 30 comes out and it's Charlotte or Becky, or even, like you said, Bianca Belair, who I think would make a fantastic champion.
So your idea is just to troll the fans up until the Rumble, essentially?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Just to get them. We're all wrestling fans. We know how annoying it is to be a wrestling fan, and I think, I wouldn't be surprised if Vince would do it.
No.
It's something he would do. He would find it funny.
No, I agree. Like, this is something that I could honestly see him doing something like that just to yank the fans' train, essentially, because he has done things like this before in the past. So I could totally see that happen. I only really caught the highlights of Raw. Did anything get brought up about Lana on Raw?
Yeah, on Raw, Lana had a championship match against Asuka.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually, she really is improving, and she didn't look bad at all. But you had Nia and Shayna ringside, and I don't know if maybe they picked up the wrong person, but they picked up Asuka to put her through the table, and then Lana saved her. I think the pop genuinely would have been better if it was Lana. Obviously, there's no crowd there, but the pop would have been better, and the way I would have booked it is, have them nearly put Lana through a table and then Asuka saves her. I think it's going to be them in a tag match next week. Jeff, they're probably just going to put the women's tag titles on them. Why they do that, I don't know. They think about the women's tag titles as an afterthought.
I mean, that kind of answers it right there, really. It's not like it's a belt that's really high on the pecking order, and that's nothing to do with the talent involved. It's just WWE made a big fuss about those belts, and then immediately after they were won, they just kind of got lost in the shuffle.
We need I love tag team wrestling, man, and
yeah,
just I want there to be tag team wrestling. Why, the first time this belt was defended or won, it was won in a four-way match, right?
Yes.
Why?
So.
Fucking why? You don't do your inaugural tag team belt in a fatal four-way. You do it in a fucking tag team match.
I agree. I love it
insane.
when you get so heated up about tag team wrestling. It's
great. I love tag team wrestling so much. I think it was the second time they did a defense. It was in the fucking elimination chamber. Why? Why? Why would you do that? That's not tag team wrestling. It's just... It's Anyway.
No, I agree, man, because, I mean, we're the same. I think tag team is my favourite form of wrestling as well. But, I mean, these belts were just never built up. I mean, it's obviously hard to give a new title a bit of prestige, but they just never really tried. And it's like you say, the belts have never been... It's rare that they're on the main card for a pay-per-view for one thing being defended. And then when it is daft stuff like it's not just it's just not a team-on-team. It's always going to be a multi-team match or something like Elimination Chamber.
I think the problem with the women's tag team titles, there's no women's tag teams. They broke up...
They broke up the two.
Desire.
Yeah, they broke up the two women's tag teams. They had Iconics, Fire and Desire. I guess they were building one with Riot Squad as well. Yeah, I guess they were building one with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, and now obviously that's gone. At least that's leading to a bigger story. But yeah, it's just they don't want to build tag teams. I mean, one of the 4 tag teams or 5 maybe on is it Raw or is it SmackDown? I forget, but it's Dominic and Rey Mysterio. That's one of the tag teams right now.
SmackDown.
Yeah. And then you've got things like a lot of the teams that they do want to push get injured, because obviously are they the Viking Raiders at the moment now? What are they called at the moment? Viking Raiders. I mean they're on the shelf at the moment, given Ivar, I think he's injured and he's going to be out for a while. So yeah, but I mean things like that could be avoided if they did have a strong tag division. Like we said before, AEW is just spot on with their tag wrestling, to the point now though it is getting a little bit overcrowded. But the teams they've got are all tremendous. Like no matter what kind of lineup you see, you know it's going to be a solid match.
See, I don't mind when they just throw teams together for a one-off, but it's when they just right, tonight we're having a tag team match. It's going to be the New Day against Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura for whatever reason. And then they go on and win the belts.
Yeah, I think could people complain about like dives and all of these overplayed things in wrestling? I think that is one of the most overplayed tropes in wrestling right now. And they did do it to an extent in AEW for a tiny bit with Kenny and Hangman. Yes, they were part of the Elite and everything. But I guess you've got to throw them in there as well. But then you've got in WWE, you've now got Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax, and you just look back at all the winners of the belts, right? You've got like the solid teams, you've got the New Day, you've got the Usos, but they both lost to teams like Seth Rollins and Jason Jordan, and just these amalgamations of two single stars.
I mean, typically it's Cesaro
that shouldn't work.
As the single star. Like, I mean, how many? I mean, obviously the one exception to that was with him and Sheamus, which started off. But they went to be the bar, so they became a legit team and were good. But
yeah,
you look back. I mean, he's one of the chief among people that, like, because they just have nothing to do with him. But they're just like, well, okay, we'll put you in a tag team because he did it with Tyson Kidd. He's done it with Shinsuke now.
Someone else as well, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, he was part of the stable with Jack Swagger, but I don't think they ever won the belts, did they? It was just a very short-lived thing.
Yeah. No. One of the problems with tag team wrestling, well, it shouldn't be a problem. It should be, something amazing. But like, if you put two top guys against the Usos, right? And it doesn't matter if like it's Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns, they shouldn't be able to beat the Usos because they're a tag team and they're in a tag match. It's like it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You won't. It's they're the ones with the gun. This is their match. If it's a singles match, no, Jimmy shouldn't really beat Braun Strowman, or Jay shouldn't beat Reigns, as he didn't. But it's tag team wrestling should really be like a tag belt shouldn't be. This is to give a single star because we don't have anything for them. It should be, this is the pinnacle of tag team wrestling. This is the pinnacle of two wrestlers being synergistic enough to earn these.
No, I totally agree. I honestly think hopefully one day we will see tag wrestling reach that apex again in WWE. Lord knows why. I mean, because it was weird, because WWE always still had it. Because apparently Vince hates tag wrestling, right? But when you look back at the history, I mean, to me, it was tag wrestling only really sort of to fall off a cliff with WWE in maybe the last decade. You look back at the previous ones, and there was always at least a decent focus on it. And you've obviously got a lot of iconic teams that were made and came up through WWE. So it's sort of really weird to see where it's sort of like become in the modern age. I personally think maybe with things like AEW showing how well tag wrestling can be, maybe then that might give them more of a push to sort of promote that kind of thing. But I think it just remains to be seen. I think we're still in kind of a lull period with it right now, where really it's teams like, I mean, chief like option among that. I mean, to kind of give you the example is the fact like New Day have won the belts 10 times since they've been a team now. Like, they just don't have a rich roster to kind of put the belts on. It's just kind of the same teams over and over again.
Yeah, I think to address that, they need to, like, I don't mind it, like, say in NXT, they have the Dusty Classic. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind that if they had put these two guys together, like the last year they did Pete Dunne and Riddle, put them together, but then they go through this tournament, teaming together, building as a team, and then maybe not straight away, but afterwards they continue to team. And then eventually win the belts, because they've developed that bond. But not just right. We're going to have Pete Dunne, Riddle, go for the tag titles, win them straight away.
Yeah, I think they did the same, because the first Dusty Classic, the winners were Balor and Joe, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the plan wasn't to actually give it to Dunne and Riddle, from what I heard. I think it was because of how how interesting the chemistry was and just how they were coming across on TV, they eventually had to sort of change plans and give it to them.
Yeah, because who was it they beat in the final? Was it?
Oh, you know what? That happened this year, and it feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
It wasn't Lorcan and Birch, was it?
It might
have been. Bear with me.
Yeah, because I know they... Did the Undisputed Era go out early?
Weren't they already champs at the time and weren't in it, right?
No,
they were
Undisputed
still in
Era
it.
were in it. So I'll go through the brackets. So it was Imperium, the Forgotten Sons, which Imperium won. Then you had the Broserweights with Mark, and then against Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster, which they won. Grizzled Young Veterans against Time Splitters, which they won. Grizzled Young Veterans won. Then you had Gallus and Undisputed Era. Undisputed Era won that. Then it was Imperium Broserweights, which Broserweights won, and then you had Grizzled Young Veterans beat the Undisputed Era. So it was the Grizzled Young Veterans.
Yeah. They're a great team.
They're one of my favorite tag teams, but they've just sort of disappeared because they just came over to the American NXT, and then obviously virus hit, everything went to shit. But then I don't know if they've been appearing on the NXT UK show since it came back.
Yeah, unsure.
I think we'll move on from the tag wrestling because we went
we'll
that. But,
we'll do an entire one on tag wrestling.
And
by one I mean like 9-part podcast.
Yeah.
I think that's just the main topic in of itself. But moving on, I think probably my favourite match of the night was Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. This is like one of the first like proper sort of super heavyweight bouts not super heavyweight, like big heavyweight bouts I've seen in a long time that was really enjoyable. They outdid themselves from their WrestleMania outing a few years ago, which was pretty boring, to be honest. But this one was really good. It was a pretty slow burner, but towards the end there, it did get like a really strong contest. So I'm hoping we'll see a better feud further down the line, because again, this was obviously just served for the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it was tremendous. Drew is just so like imposing. Roman is so imposing. I think this was the first time in a long time that we've like really seen like these are the two top guys. These are the top guys, and for both of them to be leading their respective brands, we're in a very good place, I'd say.
Yeah, I think this is the first. Well, I think this is my favourite Roman match since the disintegration of the Shield the first time. Just it got to a point towards the end where, and this is just a testament to how good Roman really is, even if people don't want to admit it. His face when McIntyre kicked out of not the spear through the barricade, but that second spear. His face when he's just like, what do I have to do? It was the first time I'd seen Roman look worried during a match. Just because he was just thinking like, what do I have to do? And obviously the ending happened, which I understand why, but I would have preferred maybe another 5 minutes of really getting that McIntyre comeback before the finish.
Yeah, I agree. Like I say, I think the match was good. It wasn't until the very end it really picked up. And I mean, it's still a standout match. I just felt like they could have went a little bit longer with that because it was quite a slow build to that finale. But at least it was a good match in the sense that it didn't make any of them look weak. Like, I think there was always the worry there that, you know, McIntyre has just won the belt back. Him losing here is not going to exactly make him look like a great champion. But I think it was always probably going to be a guarantee they were going to use shenanigans to protect him. So he didn't look weak coming out of that. It basically did make him look strong by the fact that they did have to resort to such tactics just to be able to put him down. And it just fits more with Reigns' character work of him turning into an absolute shitbag at the moment. So yeah, I just thought it was really good. And I like I say, I hope it builds to something bigger. Because I mean, given that this match was on, I think it was last year's Mania, and it was very low down the card, you could easily see this being a headline match at like a WrestleMania down the line.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Anything you want to add to it, Garrod?
No, I think, I mean, Paul Heyman said it himself. Oh, I don't remember the exact quote, but I think he said McIntyre is a godsend for the WWE, and truly, it's so apparent here, from both of the dudes. We're just in great stead. I think really this is building to just having two top guys again. Until they take the belt off of both of them, like in a month or two, but whatever.
Yeah. No, I think you're both right. It is good just to see that we have got two top guys in the company now, and the names that you can really put back in for the future. So, I mean, WWE's always wanted Reigns, and it's good to see him finally get to that level, because, I mean, we discussed, I think it was last week, that we are champions of Reigns. We always were behind him. Mm-hmm. And everyone loves Big Daddy Drew. I mean, how could you not? So, I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Moving on next, it was the Undertaker's Farewell, and we'll kind of bridge this in with the main topic, where we will just talk about the Undertaker, his career at length, and just general character work within wrestling. Going off it, I thought I've got mixed feelings about his farewell. So I thought it fit the character pretty well, like what they did. You know, he had his big long entrance. There was all the cool effects that they could give him for it as well, based on like what they could do. I just was expecting something a little different. I think the one thing that kind of I saw has been a little bit pointless was they paraded out all these legends, and they sort of made a big deal. Oh, you know, all these faces of his past are going to be there. Then they do a little hype package, cut back, they're all gone. It just felt a little bit of a waste of time to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, when I was watching, I was like, oh my god, they've brought Big Show in, they've brought Kane, Ric Flair, DX, all these people, and then you go back and it's Vince.
What do we think about...
Who doesn't even get an entrance?
No. Well, it's his show. He does what he wants.
You can't have Vince come out and not have that strut down to the ring.
I guess at least for once he's putting the spotlight on someone else, and someone who definitely deserves it.
Yeah, no, yeah. I agree. Like, I think we'll go to it in a sec, but his thing was really good. I mean, when you see Vince talk about Taker, he does generally get quite emotional, which he did with this, with his little speech. But going back to the Parade of Legends, do we think Kane just got the wrong invitation? Because everyone came out in suit,
wrestling gear,
and he showed up ready for a match. I mean, fair enough, the Godwins weren't smartly dressed, but at least they were playing up to the gimmick slightly. Like, they didn't look like they were going to wrestle. Kane came out, and I was like, does he think he's having a match? You'd think the mayor of Knox County would have some pretty nice suits by this point.
You'd think so.
I guess it's him saying that Kane isn't retired yet.
It's like, you may be retired, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not the longest serving person.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought with the whole so here's how I thought the thing should have kind of played out. And I mean, I know it's all down to taste, but I thought the big thing with Taker now is it's clear he is at the point where even if he's not fully gone from the wrestling, he's not going to be around as much as he once was, because he's basically become Mark Calloway now. Like, you look at the last week and the build to this, he was on Hot Ones, which was really good. He was even on like Good Morning Britain promoting it. Yeah. So I thought the way to go of it would have been, you had all these names here, it would have been something like we've seen before. I think he should have come out as the character, done his entrance, done that shtick, because that's what people want to see from it. But to really put the character to bed, I'd have had him just sort of slowly revert to being Mark Calloway, and you would have just had him say something, but then also had maybe a few of these legends just say some thanks to him. I thought that's kind of how they were going to go with it.
Well, to be honest, the send-off that we thought was possibly a send-off at the time at WrestleMania 33, leaving the hat and everything in the ring, and then going ringside to hug his wife and leaving, that was Undertaker coming in and Mark Calloway leaving. Obviously, there's like the old adage of going out on your back and all of this kind of thing. We're in a pandemic, and if he's had enough, he's had enough. If they don't have the time to build the story, and obviously you want the Undertaker's farewell to be in front of a crowd, but circumstances as they are, it was fine for a send-off. He deserves much more, obviously, and I think he'll get it hopefully, if we get a crowd for Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think that's important to note. Is like with my thing, I did it. Asked one of my friends about, it, and he said probably the Hall of Fame will be obviously where you can fully be Mark Calloway, and that's when I get a chance to speak. But again, it's just the fact you had all these names out, and clearly, obviously, they mainly just wanted them there because they probably had one hell of a piss up backstage afterwards. But I mean, give them something. I mean, it would have been cool maybe if they just give them a torch and they just did the Druid entrance from Mania, something like that. You know, make them feel properly part of the show instead of just, oh yeah, here's some, you know, friends from his past, some legends you've heard of, and then they just stand around, hug a bit, and then they're just gone.
Yeah, I think another thing with the legends, like there was so many, well not so many, but there were a few notable absences. Like obviously some people you can't help, like Jake the Snake, who was probably the Undertaker's first big feud. Wasn't there, but he's in AEW. But
JR would have been one of them as well, but again, couldn't have that.
Austin could have brought Austin in. Ted DiBiase, who brought him in. Brother Love. Although I did like the hologram of Paul Heyman. Paul Bearer.
No, yeah, that was a lovely touch. Like, end. Yeah, that was a lovely touch. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it was fitting to the character. It's what you wanted, but I don't know. I think if this was meant to be his final farewell, they could have maybe broke the wall down a little bit of it. But I mean, I think like people say, if they do run the Hall of Fame next year, if they can, he'll obviously be headlining it, and that'll probably definitely be the kind of big stamp on the end of his in-ring career. Because it was surprising when they brought JBL out, because he was meant to be in the class of this year, and that got scrapped. So I'm guessing they're just not letting that class have a proper induction. I think they've just kind of said, "Oh well, you're in it now. we're not going to do a ceremony."
Yeah, most likely. We'll see. I think that the veil will be pulled back a lot more during the Hall of Fame should it happen. And it as a send-off goes, it could be a lot worse. I think it's fine at the end of the day. I think we'll remember his legacy far more. It stands on its own. Even if this was a complete shambles and they gimmicked it up and it was awful, it still would have been fine because it's Taker, and it's a character that will stand better than any other, I'd say.
No, absolutely. I mean, well, that kind of bleeds into sort of discussion about him and characters overall. Would you guys say Undertaker's the best character creation in the history of WWE?
Yeah, I don't really think you could argue that. You could argue that there have been bigger stars, definitely, and bigger draws. Hogan, like, it was huge. If you want to go further back, you could argue that Bruno Sammartino was an even bigger drawing character. I guess it comes down to what you class as character. When we talk about characters, we're really talking about the mask you put on, and Undertaker being a man risen from the dead, the Deadman. That is as character based as it gets, and it's a character that has somehow survived so many different iterations and things that shouldn't have worked and wouldn't have worked with anyone else, but have just endeavored and worked no matter what. I think it is definitely the WWE's best creation, Mr. Mark Calloway.
Yes, to me, The Undertaker was in the first match I remember seeing. First match I remember seeing was Undertaker, Austin, First Blood. And just from that moment, that's what hooked me to wrestling. And it wasn't the match, it was The Undertaker. Just this huge, gothic monster. But could move so quickly, so agile. And just almost a perfect representation of what a wrestler should be, in that he just never broke character, never even, like, almost like he's not even thinking about anything else apart from that match, what he's doing, while trying not to bleed too early.
No, I agree with you both. I think in terms of, I mean, it's going to depend on character, but as you brought up there, people like Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin, who are arguably obviously bigger draws than the Undertaker. Yeah, the characters to an extent, but they're also sort of more of an extension of who they really are. Undertaker is one of those characters that there are elements of him, the real person in there, but for the most part, he is that typical over-the-top character in wrestling. He's meant to be, when you look back to obviously the sort of beginning of the character, he was basically this undead zombie-type person, and somehow that just took off and made him a megastar. And I think it's through the fact he can kind of keep reinventing who he is, that he's managed to stay on top for so long. And it's one of those things you're probably never going to see another person like it. It's like they were sort of saying in his speech, I think Cena said it was like, the bar is the Undertaker and everyone's trying to reach that level. So that just kind of shows like how popular he was backstage and on TV. Kind of going into that then, what would you say has kind of been your favourite version of the character over the years?
I think mine is when he reverted back to the Deadman from being the American Badass. That was it WrestleMania 20 against Kane.
Yeah.
That was my favourite. Just the quality of his matches with people like with Kane, with Randy Orton, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Edge, Punk. Like just I think the quality of his matches just went through the roof when he reverted back to being the Deadman.
Yeah, I it's difficult to sort of think about which Taker is my favourite. Because I mean, I was born in '96. My first introduction to Taker early on was like really gothic, really gothic Taker. But then when I was a bit more cognizant, I suppose, Biker Taker, Deadman Inc. was my prime time Taker. I don't know if it's my favourite. I honestly I kind of love not most recent, but most recent run of Taker, donning the mixed martial arts gloves and everything, which was a weird take. I think it was just another way of him trying to modernize the character a bit. And I think Biker Taker will always have a place in my heart. It's also weird that Biker Taker was the one that got the final match.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so for me, Biker Taker, that whole kind of run from American Badass to Deadman Inc. is my favourite version, because that's when I started watching wrestling, so obviously that was my first introduction to the character. What kind of blows my mind about it is how a lot of people would say that's their least favourite version of The Undertaker, and I can kind of get where they're coming from, because it was obviously a bit of that was basically as close as you got to seeing the real Mark Calloway. But to my argument, I think if he hadn't have done that transition to that character that for that era of wrestling, I think if he'd stayed as the Deadman for then, he would have been a bit of a bad fit, if that makes sense, because Attitude Era did have characters, but there was that point from maybe about 2000 into the Ruthless Aggression era where characters weren't a huge priority for the WWE. And I think if he'd stayed as the Deadman, I think he would have obviously still had his fans, but I don't know, I think it would have been more of a damage to that kind of era, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, I think my favourite then, and I think his best, is that 2004 to 2008 Phenom. Because that's when they started coining the Phenom. And I think that was probably his best and my favourite of his stretches. And anyone who says this is my least favourite Taker, it's like saying this is my least favourite orgasm. It's still an orgasm, It's like every Taker era has been great. He's always been just bloody great at what he does.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I don't really think you can point to a thing that was absolutely awful with him or the character. I mean, there's probably a few moments for sure you can pick out, but generally when it comes to the character work, it's always been on point and it's always made sense for where he's at with everything. I think the big thing was is like when he did the American Badass, he never wanted to go back to the Deadman, but when they did, it was sort of like a good amalgamation. So it wasn't him completely donning, you know, the gloves or like a druid robe again. It was still kind of the look of the American Badass, but he was kind of managing to carry both characters at the same time, and that sort of way he's kind of kept that evolution for like the last, God, what has it been now? Maybe 10 to 15 years. So he's carried it well. Kind of going into that then, what would you say is probably your favourite Taker match or moment?
My favourite Taker match is WrestleMania 26, Korea versus Streak. I know people say that 25 is the better match, but to me it's because that I think that's better because you couldn't see The Undertaker losing the streak. But at the same time, Shawn Michaels was still so good in the ring, on the mic. You just couldn't see him retiring. So it was one of them few matches where you were just like, who's going to win? It could have gone either way and people would have been satisfied or dissatisfied, whichever way you want to look at it. But just incredible match, just the chemistry that Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker had in the ring. I don't think I ever saw them have a bad match.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right in the sense that that match was probably one of the few streak matches where it was probably hard to tell like which way it could go because of the stakes that were involved. Because you're right, like Michaels, I think people could somewhat see Michaels was probably starting to wind down, but I think there would have been still a big portion of people thinking that wasn't going to be the end of it, and because they had essentially a big like year-long build around it as well, because the build going into that was one of the better ones on top of that as well. Yeah, Garrod, what about you?
Undertaker versus Goldberg at Super Showdown.
You're fired. Get out.
Nah, my favorite match of his, as is most of my favorite matches, is a one with CM Punk. I loved his Mania match with Punk. I think Punk put it all on the line. Taker absolutely demolished that match. It was great. That's probably my favorite match.
No.
Even just Heyman at the time. There's that iconic shot of like Punk sitting with the urn and Heyman making this like creepy smile, and I think Taker it was a match where just Taker really got a kick like in the character. He just became like so much more angry and gave him a purpose to just be the dead man.
Yeah, I mean, I think what really helped for that as well, I mean, no disrespect, obviously the death of Paul Bearer at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people were quite uncomfortable with the heat Punk was getting. Like, obviously, he interrupted, the memorial to him and dumped the ashes over Undertaker. But I think that's what made the match even better. Like, this was, like, Punk going full heel apex to in that match. And I thought it fed incredibly well into that feud. And I think we talked about it last week as well. Yeah, again, that's one of my all-time favorite WrestleMania matches. It's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I kind of went with a bit of a strange, well, not quite a strange pick. I think if people have seen it, they know probably why. I picked his match with Jeff Hardy for the Undisputed title on Raw back in, I think it was like 2002.
Yeah, that's
the ladder match.
Yeah, the ladder match. Mainly because obviously this was like probably where Ruthless Aggression had just kind of really taken in, and by this point Hardy was no longer with Jeff. Jeff was no longer with Matt. Sorry. I remember watching this match as a kid, and obviously back then, I mean, I liked The Undertaker then, but I was obviously more, when you're a kid, you're a huge Jeff Hardy mark. That's the guy everyone always loved with if you grew up in that generation. And it was just such a well-done match because it generally felt believable that Hardy could have won that match. Even though I think it does go the kind of typical trope where he does kind of put it all on the line when he had the chance to win it and crashed and burned. But at the time, Taker's a heel in that match, but then it was just such like a good recognition to Jeff that he doesn't beat him up afterwards. He actually comes out and gives him the due that he could have come close to taking the Undisputed title off him. So it does just kind of go to show like how out the way Taker would go to like push newer stars. Like he would give people the nod and make sure they looked great in the process.
Yeah, I think The Undertaker, especially when he went into the American Badass, I think that was the point. He was like, right. I think maybe in the back of his mind somewhere he was thinking, right, I've had my time. Let's build the next generation. Like didn't put Hardy over in that match, but Hardy looked bloody good in that match. And I think if it wasn't for that match with The Undertaker, Jeff might not have ever had a world title in WWE. But then he put over Maven, not just let Maven eliminate him on his own after clearing the ring in a Royal Rumble match, and then let him beat him for the hardcore title. He's given so much to the business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, he's never been one of those wrestlers who's been selfish. Whenever you hear stories about him, like, he's the one guy who will do business. I think maybe there's been the odd point he'll do a bit of kickback, but generally he will kind of make sure he goes out of his way to build talent, especially when he thinks it's someone he can believe in and back as being the future. So I think for that, you're not going to find anyone more. He's certainly not a selfish person, put it that way. He's always willing to do what's right for business.
Well, if you've seen the episode Hot Ones, he explains that his dad gave him the bit of advice: be careful whose toes you step on your way up the ladder, because you're going to be kissing their asses when you're coming down. Yeah. Like, it's perfect. Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. I mean, what more can you say to that? To be honest, I guess sort of moving on from Taker. I mean, obviously, we definitely haven't seen the last one. I'm hoping he'll still obviously make appearances and stuff. But if it's been the end, I mean, massive round of applause to the man, because I mean, I don't think we'll ever see another career like it. But to that kind of end, do you think we could see another character like Taker? I mean, I'm not going to say like another, like, not in the sense of a carbon copy, but someone else who could take a character and reach sort of similar heights.
Yeah, when you try and make comparisons like this, you're always like, oh, well, The Fiend and Bray Wyatt, because he's also spooky. But I think, like you say, is having a character, whether that's someone who comes in and it's a gimmick that maybe we haven't even seen yet, or does it better than everyone else. Let's imagine, for example, Hurricane Helms comes in and does the Hurricane gimmick now, like, and it lasts 30 years. Having someone come in and do a gimmick like that, again, I don't know if we'd ever see anyone do a Taker level gimmick. One that was able to reinvent, one that was able to live that long. I don't know. I mean, The Fiend is an extension of Bray Wyatt, and Bray Wyatt's character's been going on very long. I think it could reach a level not similar, not on the same vein, but a level that character work just hasn't, or very rarely gets to. You know, I mean, who is even close to the level of Taker? What characters can even scratch the surface of what he's done?
Yeah. See, I think like there's not many, like, again, it goes back to what you mean by character, but if you think of someone like, obviously retired now, but Sting had that vein where he was like the surfer guy, and then completely transitioned into what the Sting that everyone probably thinks of when they think of him. But then you've also got Chris Jericho, who has constantly reinvented himself, constantly stayed on the pulse, and stayed relevant for over 2 decades. Yeah.
It's such an interesting dissection of what you believe a character to be, because at the end of the day, every single person that has ever wrestled is a character when they're in the ring. And if they're not, they've never wrestled again, because it would be too shit. Yeah, maybe people go into the ring and they're a heightened version of themselves, but that is still a character. Like, John Cena can go into the ring and be John Cena, but when he's in the ring, he's the character John Cena, and when he's out, he is the man John Cena. I mean, Chris Jericho, the character, has, the same longevity. He's now been going longer than Taker. And it looks like he's still got a few years left in him. I don't know. It's such a weird thing because it's almost not fair to call the Undertaker a gimmick anymore because it's been lived so long that it's transcended gimmick and become character. It's a whole subset of character.
I think to that end, it's not. It's one of those weird things in wrestling, you know, like if you look at other forms where people have to play a character, like people who do film, for example, they basically do that one character and that's kind of it. Like nothing always really rubs off on them. Wrestling's a strange thing where people will come in as typically the person they are, and then they more become that character. So that's kind of the thing that made Undertaker stand out was the fact like it. Other than probably when he had that period of being the American Badass and he could be more himself, he essentially lived that gimmick non-stop until like recently. So he essentially became that character, and I think it's one of those things with the character. Some of the character rubbed off on him, but then obviously some of his original self is in that character. But you won't see people like him doing the gimmick work like he did, how he would go on chat shows in the full hat, gloves, and jacket and have to suffer through idiotic interviewers while trying to remain in gimmick. You just don't kind of see that anymore.
No, I don't think there's ever going to be anyone who's going to come in that's going to get that level of character work for the length of time being on top as the Undertaker has. Because think about it, like Undertaker's been worked for WWE longer than any of us have been alive. That's how long he's been with that company. Which is like how many other people can say, especially in a job so physically demanding. And I think he's retired at the right time.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the Undertaker wrestle anymore.
I don't want to see him wrestle anymore. The one thing I'd want to see, but I don't think they probably should do, would be that match with Sting, unless they did it in a way where none of them looked like, you know, pagged because of it. But I think you're right. I think if this is the final farewell, they just have to leave it at that. It's been the perfect kind of full stop, because I mean, it was never going to happen. Like, he was never going to tarnish his legacy, but everyone was basically saying, and even he addressed that in the last ride, you know, probably his last decent match was the CM Punk one at WrestleMania 29. Since then, he's just never been able to deliver as well as he could in the ring. So I hope this is kind of like the full stop on everything. I guess going off that then, what would you say are some of your favourite other characters then, other than The Undertaker? Like, who else would you say is like a good standout character that was from in wrestling? For me...
Great Khali.
Okay, you can get out as well. I think for me, and obviously it's hard not to draw that parallel, but Kane. Kane's a difficult subject because whereas Undertaker's character's never really suffered, Kane's has been through the ringer quite a bit. I'd say it was kind of perfect up until he did put the mask back on again, and then you had things like Corporate Kane, which had sort of funny moments and were not right at the mark, but whereas Undertaker's mystique of the character remained intact, Kane's kind of fell apart as he's slowly gone on. Like, you know, I think he had one of the perfect backstories, like, you know, with the burnt face, and he was essentially like the Michael Myers of wrestling. He was a silent killer that no one could stop. But I think when you look to outweigh the good of the bad, Kane's still one of those like character creations that has got great testament to it.
Yeah, I think one of the best characters in wrestling would be Jushin Thunder Liger. Throughout his career, he's had I wouldn't say it's a similar career to Taker, but you know, he's been able to reinvent and keep this incredible thing going. He retired, I think it was last year, or maybe I think it was this January. His last match was at Wrestle Kingdom. You know, obviously hasn't reached the same level as Taker, but I think he is a very much a standout when it comes to character, especially as like a, you know, luchador masked wrestler.
Yeah, well, I think it depends on. I mean, I'm willing to wager. I guess people in Japan would hold him in more revered than Undertaker. So, you know, I mean, it's just because, I mean, obviously he did wrestle in America and stuff, and people do know of him, but obviously for our audience taste, it's obviously we know more about Taker than Liger, but I think both are obviously up there. I think it just depends on the audience you speak to.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, one of my favourite characters, even though his career was cut severely short, Steve Austin. Just the way pretty much from one promo, the Austin 316, he changed the face of wrestling. And the fact that promo was completely off the cuff. I think if it wasn't for Austin, like becoming Stone Cold, WCW would have won the Monday Night Wars. Same with if the Undertaker had jumped ship to WCW, we wouldn't be watching WWE anymore. We'd be watching WCW.
I can see your point in that, but then, I mean, I think WCW would have kind of went tits up regardless of if Austin hadn't happened. I think they would have had a longer run, but then kind of going back to the fact I watched the David Arquette documentary, I think if WCW just carried on regardless of that, they would have eventually had to close the doors because of the amount of money they were hemorrhaging and all the mistakes they made. But I do get your point. I think wrestling would have certainly been different if you hadn't have had Austin 316, because he was I think he still probably stands as probably the biggest money draw that they've ever had, to be honest. And when you look at everything in terms of like the houses they drew, the merchandise they shifted, so I can totally see your point in that. Cool. I suppose something else that could be fun to bring up. Are there any sort of underrated characters that have like occurred from over the years? Because I mean, WWE's big thing at one point is they had nothing but gimmick wrestlers that were pretty, well, they were terrible. Let's not beat around the bush. But I've got two I can point out. I honestly think Doink the Clown, and bear with me, was actually a good character when you look at what they were trying to achieve with it. So they originally brought it in as Matt Bourne because he was like he was a really good technical wrestler, and the idea, and when the character first started as that evil character, it was actually a good idea when they had Bourne behind the makeup, and they had all these quite big plans. Like they wanted him in a program with Brett. They wanted him to be a bigger character, and I mean he did do well. Like he was quite a big draw for like the younger crowd, I guess, when he did go good. But it was when they made that switch to good that the wheels kind of fell off it. And now it is just kind of a character people just don't look back on fondly. But I think it is one of those ones where if it had worked out differently, it would be a lot more fondly loved character, if you like. But even then, it's not like people completely hate on it. Like they always still make action figures of him and stuff like that. So it's one of those ones where I think a lot of people will be quick to hate. But when you actually look into it, it could have been a much bigger character, if you like.
I would say Damien Sandow has done some really great character work, and I think one that stands out to me, and one that wasn't even very long but got so over, it reminds me of how Orange Cassidy gets over. It's a bit ridiculous. It's old school wrestling fans who, you know, believe that the only thing that happened in old school wrestling was like a 30-minute headlock, would look at it and say it's dumb, but the stunt double, Damien Sandow, the Mizdow, was so fucking good. I loved that. It's such a good like character thing that really worked with both of their characters.
You're right. No, that was like Sandow was just such a weird case, but like he was one of those people where no matter what they put in front of him, he made it work, which is what I think is more of a testament to him as a person. But like, you could literally have given him any gimmick and somehow he would have probably managed to get that over somehow.
Yeah, Sandow was fantastic. It's just a shame that he got let go after, because it wasn't long after Damien Mizdow ended that he got let go, which is a shame because it would have been, I think, if they'd done it right, they could have had him like try and find that new person to be their stunt double. But I think after a while it would have went to Charlie Haas, when he kept coming out as different characters for a while. But Damien Sandow, like one of the best character workers of like the modern times.
No, absolutely. Any character you want to pick on, Jace?
CM Punk, but the Straight Edge Society CM Punk, because that should have been the launch pad for not just Punk, but for Gallows, Joey Mercury, and was it Serena?
Yeah, I think it was Serena.
That should have been the launch pad for all four of them. It was the most hated thing in WWE, but it was like getting so much heat. But I think that's because Punk did it all, and then Vince got his hands on it and didn't understand it. And I think that was one of the biggest wasted opportunities in like modern WWE.
Yeah, I mean when it got when it was cult-like and they had people shaving their hair, and I think there was a segment where they had like audience members shaving their hair. I don't think they were actually probably actors or whatever, but it still really worked.
No, absolutely. I mean, it worked incredibly well just from the heat he was getting. I mean, when you like look at the documentary that came out, he was like getting like people calling him the devil and like a blasphemer and all that. He was building some incredible heat that should have made him. I mean, by that point, obviously, he'd been in the main event picture, but this was kind of hit when he got bumped down a bit. Like that should have, like you said, just been more of a launch pad to make him cement him as the main event star going forward. I suppose if that had happened, we would have never got something like the pipe bomb, which is like one of the most sort of iconic moments. But yeah, I agree. Like it should have took him to the next level, and it was a shame it just kind of, well, not through his choice. Like WWE just chose to fizzle it out and not ever let it go anywhere. But one character I wrote down that I love and I don't care what people think was when Paul Burchill was a pirate.
I also love that. I love that just because not only was it just cheesy and fun, but they got William Regal to dress up as a tavern wench.
Again, like the whole thing was, I mean, this was like, still ruthless aggression, and obviously characters like this still weren't a big thing, but I mean, Paul Burchill gave it as all. Fair enough, it was just a bit of a Johnny Depp ripoff, but like, I thought the entrance was cool, just swinging in on a rope. He got over pretty well from what I remember. Like, I don't remember it being a character that people massively hated. I mean, maybe because I wasn't much of like, an internet user then, so I don't know what like hardcore fans were thinking. But I generally thought it was just a fun little character. Like, it probably was, obviously could have never been a main event thing, but I could have easily seen him having a decent run with like a mid-card title or something. And I just thought it was funny, like the backstage segments were always good. Regal's just always like an ultimate comic foil. He just gets comedy, so he played off everything really well on top of that. Any other characters you want to bring up, gents?
I think when you're discussing Taker, it's very difficult to even bring up anyone in the same breath.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think the kind of idea of this, obviously this is mainly just to talk about Taker, but I mean, given the character he is, it just helps that we could do a little bit of discussion work on it. I mean, like with anything we discuss, I'm sure it's something we could always go back to just to kind of talk about gimmicks and characters in like a broader sense. But I think ultimately the idea of this was just to kind of go over our favourite Undertaker moments and kind of show why we think he is this, like, one of the best creations WWE ever came up with.
Yeah, I just want to do another good character.
Not
a wrestler. Well, he is a wrestler, but not. This is not the character. I'm not meaning his wrestling character, but William Regal as the general manager of NXT is fantastic. And I think that's, again, it's just a testament to William Regal. He can make anything work, including drinking tea that's been peed in, like Chris Jericho.
Yeah, I mean, I think why Regal does so well with these bits is because he is, if you ever read his book, he is just an absolute lover of comedy. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense because he has tried stand-up before and stuff, but he loves classic British comedy, and he's like a massive student of that, so he knows he's kind of worked on his comedic timing to a fine point, and he's kind of the guy who's never afraid to be made to look a fool either. Like, I think to him it is just an ultimate laugh, and he's willing to do whatever it takes just to kind of get that laugh and response out of the audience. I think what's kind of good about his character now is he is just perfect in that authority figure role, and you're never going to get another authority figure who can say war games the way he can.
No. You will never get. It just makes you feel warm and fuzzy. Just the way he says war games with so much passion and gusto.
It just gets you. Like it wouldn't be the same kind of. It just wouldn't be the same feeling this time of year if you didn't at least hear him say it once. So that's why I was mainly happy they announced it.
Although I still would have liked if Dusty hadn't died, if Dusty was still the general manager of NXT, having him announce War Games.
Yeah.
Oh, it's War Games, baby.
No, absolutely, man. No, fantastic. Anything else you want to bring up there, lads, on Taker or characters?
No, I think I'm good.
I think we went over solid. A lot. Yeah, we went over a lot. Well, I think that'll probably do it for this week's episode. Couple of things just before we wrap up. So obviously, you mentioned there, you can find us over on the social media channels. We're at the Bearhug Club Pod on Instagram, Bearhug Club on Twitter. Find us on Facebook at the Bearhug Club Podcast. Something to quickly plug there. So our friends I mentioned there at the Pick and Mix podcast, they do a lot of sort of plugging of our stuff. I recently joined them in a D&D series campaign, which you can now find online. You can check them out at the Pick and Mix podcast, the Pick and Mix pod on Instagram, and the Pick and Mix pod on Twitter. So that'll do it for this week. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.